January 29, 2025. This is the S&P 500 E-Futures Mini on the 2000 tick chart using NinjaTrader 8. This is what the chart looked like today. This is a FOMC rate decision day. So they actually decided that they weren't going to change the rates, which is kind of what everybody thought it was going to be. There's kind of a wait and see. The rate decision came out at 11 o'clock Pacific Standard, which is about right here. You see this gigantic 13-point candle. Now I've seen it move even more. And then Fed Chair Powell comes out at 11:30, and he spoke for just under an hour. There wasn't very many setups that I saw. There were some, but I didn't bother marking it because it just felt very tricky today, just because, as usual, right before the rate decision occurs, there's low volume, but it was very choppy today. And then after the rate decision, after Powell speaks, I think the market needed some time to digest what was going on, so it was also very choppy. And as you can see in the after hours, it's still very choppy. It's because there's a few big companies that are reporting earnings, but it doesn't really matter because I don't really trade the after hours or the pre-market. So this can be whatever it is. I did take one trade today and it was profitable. So I'll go ahead and zoom in there in a moment. And yeah, there wasn't any other real setups that I could find that was worth trading. So here we go. Trade actually occurred here. Let's turn it on. Oops. There we go. Okay, in the pre-market, knowing that it's an FOMC day, I think the market was just kind of sedated. Now, I will say there are a lot of technical second entries all over the place today because there was just a lot of choppy price action, but I discounted most of them just because the signal bar wasn't very good, or it just felt like it's an area that just for whatever reason, my gut, which I know isn't a very refined at this point, just my intuition and instinct didn't really tell me that it was a good idea to take that trade. And I also knew since it's FOMC day, I was going to just try to be taking it pretty easy, especially if I'd got one trade and it was profitable, just kind of hang back, let the market do what it's going to do, and probably come out tomorrow. So the pre-market, it did spike up, came down on this choppy yellow down channel, reversed, an ugly looking choppy 2 attempts up, then this orange down channel, then it bounced again, and it had created this green one, then it kind of moved down on this yellow one. I mean, you could have drawn these channels differently than I did, have them more tighter, have them bigger, but this is kind of how I saw it and how I thought it would work. There's an overshoot here, test makes new low. Again, if you look closely, there are a bunch of second entries in here, technical wise, but they're not necessarily very safe in my opinion. So, because like, for example, there's already here, first entry short, second entry short here, it's a green bar. It is right at the EMA. I'm not really sure about it, decided to leave it alone. I'm just gonna go to probably the few setups that I did see. So it actually pushes up in this orange up channel. At this point, I do see some kind of resistance on this trading range potential because there was actually some kind of resistance being respected here. I thought there was some kind of resistance respected here with a bunch of overshoots, but then once it overshot here, I kind of dragged down, placed it here for now. This did coincide with the pre-market. So at least right here, this is the pre-market highs and lows. And it actually sets up for my first trade. I have no idea why it flushed down this severely, but it was a new high. Say first entry long, pullback, second entry long. Actually, I didn't take this trade. I take that back. I took the trade over here. My mind just got scrambled. Then it creates a new low. First entry short, pullback, second entry short. Second entry short technically hasn't failed yet when you see this, but you do have a lower high. So I'm thinking the second entry short is about to fail. The higher low didn't break above, so it's not technically a clean higher low yet because this could still be a second entry short that continues downwards. As a strong push through the EMA, but I didn't like that it didn't break above, and so there's a little bit of a conflicting bias. So it's a possible trade, but I called it an almost trade just because I wasn't too sure. It just felt like it could go either way. Pushes around, it starts moving down on this very shallow channel, but I'm also keeping in mind it could be a trading range. So it bounces, 3 bounces here. I mean, you could have said this is a new high, first entry long, second entry long, second entry long with a triple test, potentially, but you're coming in right at the EMA. I will admit the EMA isn't very reliable at this point yet, but it is undeniable that it is moving down. On top of that, it had violations above, violations below, so it is also making what I know is lower lows every time. So every time it broke through the EMA, it doesn't break through it strongly and it quickly gets doused. So here it kind of stays outside, pushes back down. You have a new low, first entry short, second entry short, not really a good signal bar, no good setup. It sets up for my first trade. So I saw as one leg up, and then I'm thinking a potential second leg up. And as I mentioned before, it looks like it's kind of following down this shallow channel, but every time it broke above the EMA, it spends more time below than it does above. So when it creates a new low here, it creates the first entry short, creates a second entry short. I was thinking it might come up and touch this. So I wanted to see what happens on this next candle. So opens, it's kind of faltering, and I thought it made a measured move. I like that this thing closed below. So during the life of this candle, I actually entered right here, a little midlife of this candle. So it did definitely break below. So I thought, okay, I'm going to try to take it for a quick 1 point. Because I did see a first entry short, second entry short. Looks like it's going to continue back down. I was a little off because I thought I would get out before this bottom where I thought my potential range was, because it looks like it's being respected here. Granted, the bottom of the range could actually be slightly lower. If it was, let's say right here, whoops, not this guy, right here, then I would be getting out right at the bottom, or you could take it even lower. I didn't like taking it all the way down here just because there's no confirmations here. I did like it a little higher, about right here where the meat of these candles are, but that puts me right at the lows. So it was a little riskier, I'll admit. I took it right at the lows of this before this closed. Fortunately, I was lucky this time. It, pushed down, gives me my fill. I move my runner from one tick above here to one tick below my entry, and it gets stopped out on the next candle. But if I was able to hold longer, it looks like I would have been able to probably get out here, which isn't that much more. And I believe I would have gotten stopped out by this candle because my stop was right here, if not this candle. That was my one and only trade. It wasn't the best, I'll admit, and it felt a little dicey, especially on a kind of weird, choppy day like this, knowing that there's this big announcement coming up. So I decided, okay, I'm just going to be thankful for that trade and kind of take my, you know, foot off the pedal and just see what happens. Technically, I have a second entry short here, but again, it's not very clean. It kind of just chops around, creates two legs up, makes a third leg up. There is a second entry long here. I was kind of on the fence about this because the break of this green up channel needs to test the highs. First attempt up, potentially a second attempt up. Second attempt up. These candles, I mean, this is a 12 tick candle. It did break one tick below and flush up. I don't have enough trust in that this EMA is really going to hold right now because as you can see, it's above, below, in quick succession. On top of that, it just broke out of this trading range. So this could be a failed breakout with another move back down. So in real time, you see this, and it just came from this really strong candle. Then it looks like it kind of bounces, but you can't neglect the fact that it did break below. So am I moving back into here? Or, is it going to respect this bigger range? Of this range, how reliable is it? And I'm still playing within another bigger range. So it's right here trying to push into the pre-market range. Is it going to be a breakout pullback? I have no idea. Prices then continue moving up. EMA starts to hold. Then it flushes down. Now, it looked like it was a spike and then a channel. So I first thought this was an overshoot, tested the low, but it kept going. So then I tried to draw this guy, which fit pretty nicely. And I did try to find a larger channel that would capture this all. Let's just go to see how this ends up playing out. I did try to draw this at the time, and I was thinking this doesn't look quite right. And then if I drag it even lower to try to encapsulate all this overshoot till it doesn't have an overshoot, then it doesn't even look right. But then where do I cut it off to treat a part that does have an overshoot? Because you have a touch here, then you have this big overshoot. Then you also try to drag it down here. It just didn't look right. So I just treated it as two channels. But even then, I wasn't looking that hard for a setup because this just looks sketchy. Bounces, creates a higher low, but there's no trade there. Pushes up. And when I saw this, it's more of a hindsight mark. But if you're looking at a bigger time frame, you see this big push up, one attempt up. This could be the second attempt up to test the highs of this thing. There's also two legs down. Technical count is already a first entry short, pushes all the way up. You have a second entry short, pushes up. You have a higher low here, but you also have a new low here, first entry short, second entry short. So doing the technical count here doesn't look right. But if you do a visual first entry short, second entry short, second entry short failure, new high, first entry long, pullback, second entry long. This makes more sense, except I'm I I was kind of dialed in, tuned in. I didn't know which should I look at the higher time frame of 4,000 ticks, which kind of sets up a little more clean. But then it's just I marked it as a possible trade, but you have to be more aggressive because this is also a really large candle. This is a 20, no, 17, 18, 19 tick candle. I do like that it moved one tick below and flushed up, closed strong, enough room for a 1 point scalp. For 1 point, risking 5, even risking 2, because I'm going to potentially run into this localized high. It just felt not worth it, so I left it alone. In this case, it would have worked, but you have no idea I was going to do that. Chops around, and this blue area is where the FOMC rate decision is about to happen. This is 30 minutes before, all the way up to 11 o'clock Pacific Standard. And you see this big giant drop, bounce recovery, and even from here, you can tell, look at the timestamps. These 3 candles are in 1 minute. So that's a lot of price movement, a lot of selling, a lot of buying, a lot of things happening. It's easy to get chopped to pieces here. So I'm not taking a chance on this. And I know prior to that, roughly 30 minutes and roughly 15 minutes after, it gets kind of noisy. It gets hard to predict, hard to read. Price action doesn't necessarily follow the rules in this case. So I just kind of stay out of the zone. I was watching and marking lines though, marking the charts and channels. There's no real clean second entries that I like. I mean, this is just kind of don't risk the play here, even if it looks like a good setup, because it can still chop you up. It comes out, and then this is where Fed Powell comes out and starts speaking. And from my experience, he could cause a knee-jerk reaction. So I'm also very cautious when he starts coming out to speak. There's this push up. It's a first entry long pullback, second entry long. Second entry long, I like the second entry long because it looked like it was 2 clean legs down from here. But you have him speaking, and that just kind of, I don't need to do that. That just makes me nervous. So I'm staying out of this. Plus, after he speaks, he takes questions. Now, it's less volatile because the interest rate thing for sure moves it. But I've seen days where because he does it every time, comes out and gives some color and answers some questions. And that does cause the market to whipsaw a bit. So I'm just staying out of it. He talks for a little bit less than an hour. And I see these setups, but again, it's just these are just too congested. Candles are too side by side, long tails. I don't really like the just chopping, but really no going nowhere because from here it's 60, 80, let's just say it's 60, 82, all the way down to 60, 68. So it's about a 14-point range or 14-point volatile area that I'm just kind of not smart enough to navigate effectively or with confidence, so I left it alone. But then I did see this as a new low, localized new low. First entry short, pull back, second entry short, and it's a good signal bar with this is the localized high, so you technically could say this is a new high. It's a first entry long, pullback, second entry long. This could be a higher low, second entry short, good signal bar, enough room to the bottom. Thing that I don't like about it is it's a little late in the day. It's I feel like the market's still digesting, but it looked like it would have worked. I didn't draw it, but I should have. Looks like it's kind of in a range, something like this, with enough room to the lows. Then prices continue dropping, and I'm just not even thinking about taking a trade at this point because I'm just happy with my one trade. Looks like it's one leg up, pullback, second leg. It is very tight, very choppy. Could have put in this line. And it's spanning the entire channel, so I'm just leaving it alone. Prices move down, bounces, pushes up, hits this consolidation area, count resets, triple test. This is also another nice setup. This one's I felt like it would have worked, but again, this is too late in the day for me to want to take it. It pushes up, makes a new high, 2 attempts up, matches a high, so I'm not thinking this is going to test the high anymore. Comes down strongly in this green down channel. Now, I was playing with the idea that it looks something closer to this. This is the first break. Whether you say it tested low or not, I'm not sure, but it is making 1 attempt, and it's making a second attempt. This one, this candle, I do like that Kind of respecting the EMA, it made a measured move all the way up, good signal bar. I thought this was good enough for a 1 point scalp, but what's stopping me is it's about 15 minutes before the close, and I just don't want to take a chance on that, especially already being green for the day. So it kind of chops around, hits this noisy area, and moves into the close. So it's FOMC day. Usually they're kind of gnarly. I'm glad I was profitable. Just take the one trade and walk away. I did stick around and watch and try to fight the FOMO, which I'm getting better at, and didn't get dragged in. But other than that, there weren't too many clean setups that I necessarily liked. There were some, I mean, there are a bunch of second entries technically, but they just, for whatever reason, didn't really float my boat. So hopefully that was helpful.